The Lincoln Highway. The Lincoln Highway was the first transcontinental highway across the United States, dedicated on October 31st, 1913 as a memorial to Abraham Lincoln. The highway spanned from San Francisco to New York. Its original length, 3,389 miles. The Lincoln Highway Association, LHA, selected the route by connecting roads, trails, and abandoned railroad right-of-ways. The highway originally crossed 13 states and eventually included West Virginia as the 14th when the road was later realigned. The route passed through the states of California, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. Many major cities and sites were bypassed as the Lincoln Highway Association wanted to make the highway as short as possible across the country. Beginning in 1925, the highway's name was being replaced by the U.S. numbered highway system, and by 1927, the original Lincoln Highway Association was nearing its end. It was then that the Lincoln Highway Association sought to mark the highway by producing 3,000 concrete markers to memorialize the martyred Abraham Lincoln. The marker in this exhibit is one of the original 3,000 produced and weighs more than 220 pounds. The markers were placed along the original highway route by Boy Scout troops across the country on September 1st, 1928. Most of the original markers have been lost to history, and very few remain as intact as the marker in this exhibit. By the end of the 1920s, most of the Lincoln Highway had been renamed with numeric labels such as US 30 and US 50 in Nevada. The Lincoln Highway designation slowly disappeared by the time the 1950s interstate highway system was developed. Interstate 80 replaced what was left of the Lincoln Highway through Sparks and Reno. Today, I-80 runs just outside this museum, and the original route of the Lincoln Highway through this area is still marked by the Lincoln Highway. The Lincoln Highway Bridge Rails, the coast-to-coast Lincoln Highway. These are the Lincoln Highway rails built on the nation's first transcontinental highway. Towns all across the nation were anxious to have the Main Street of America pass their way and went all out to advertise the route. Washoe County had been criticized for not marking their part of the route, so in 1914, contractor A.F. Nett, when building a new culvert about 0.9 miles east of here, took it on himself to mark the highway with these unique rails. H.E. Fredrickson, consul at large of the Lincoln Highway Association, was so impressed with the rails that he proposed this design for all Lincoln Highway bridges clear across the country. Only one other such set of bridge rails were ever built in Tama, Iowa, the following year in 1915. In later years, when the highway numbering system replaced named highways, this route became US 40 and was eventually realigned. During the 1970s, when Interstate 80 replaced US 40, the Nevada Department of Transportation salvaged the old bridge rails from the long-abandoned Lincoln Highway and put them on display here. And you can see them as you're coming into Reno, eastbound on Interstate 80. There's a scenic bypass, and if you take that, you'll see the Lincoln and the highway bridge rails that are still there to this day with a Lincoln Highway marker. The Lincoln Highway and Sparks. The Lincoln Highway did not initially include Sparks in its route, but ultimately the path was adjusted and included portions of what are today Vista Boulevard, Prater Way, and Victorian Avenue. One of the longest highway alignments running through Sparks was on B Street, which is today Victorian Avenue, the street directly outside this museum. The highway ran through this area before connecting with what is now 4th Street in East Reno. Beginning in 1921, the Victory Highway was established and ran from San Francisco, California to Atlantic City, New Jersey. Named to honor World War I veterans, the Victory Highway followed the Lincoln Highway route from Fernley, 30 miles east of Sparks, to Sacramento, California. The section of the highway running through Sparks was renamed U.S. Highway 40 in 1926, and the more southern route of the Lincoln Highway eventually renamed U.S. Highway 50. There are several Lincoln Highway signs posted along the B Street route, both east and west of the museum along Victorian Avenue. Keep an eye out for them as you leave the museum.
A little over a century ago, there was no single auto road across America. There were wagon trails and ranch paths in the west, turnpikes and farmers' lanes in the east. But mostly, these roads didn't lead anywhere.
The roads of the time, what they were just simple paths through the dirt, and these were roads that ranchers and farmers would use to get to town and get.
So bicyclists actually are the ones that really started the Good Roads movement, because the roads back then, of course, were dirt, which turned to mud, and then when the mud hardened, you had hard roads. rut, which is fine for a horse and a buggy, but certainly someone on a bicycle, it doesn't work. So when the automobile then became more prevalent, the automobile entrepreneurs who had the financial wherewithal jumped on the bandwagon, and basically they became the fathers of the good road movement at that point.
Carl Fisher, who was really a promoter, really a grandstander in many ways. He was not a planner, but he had good ideas.
In 1912, Fisher conceived a hard-surfaced improved highway from the Atlantic to the Pacific. He called it the Coast-to-Coast Rock Highway.
Commerce was a big piece of it, but also to encourage people to get out and travel. But they also were patriotic and believed it would benefit the country.
Within a few months, Fisher had over $4 million in pledges from auto manufacturers and auto-related businesses, all except for one important holdout. Henry Ford was against private enterprise funding roads in America. He thought the government should be responsible. In time, he would prove to be right. The automobile had been around for a couple of decades before the Lincoln Highway. Henry Joy suggested a different name for Fisher's Coast-to-Coast Rock Highway.
Let's call it the Lincoln Highway. He said that to Carl Fisher, and Carl Fisher instantly knew that was the right name for it, because Abraham Lincoln did link the country back together.